On this episode of Technicolor Blood, Ben Affleck is officially out and Zack Snyder is back.
I have nothing to say to that.
Technicolor Blood, we are back. Happy as always to have you guys with us. I'm Chris. I'm joined by Terrence. How's it going?
Hey, you sounded a little uncertain there for a second.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure who you were for a minute there because my world is upside down because Jeff Bridges is dead to me now, but we'll talk about that later. So, Ben Affleck, let's just jump in this thing. Big news this week on the Batman DC Universe front. Ben Affleck is apparently officially out as Batman, although I saw, I don't know, his agent or someone else quickly after the news came out that he was leaving the Batman project, that he's still officially signed on. It's not official yet, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to go with the overwhelming amount of news that I've seen, which is that he's out.
So let me get this straight. You're just going to completely gloss over the fact that I watched a movie this week and you couldn't be bothered to do that, and you're just going to jump right into the news.
Have I forgotten the format of the show already?
Well, I mean, we just started this week, so yeah. I'm going to forgive you for it.
Okay, so we'll talk about Batman later, but first let's talk about something completely unrelated to that.
This is going really well.
You'll probably never hear this, but I have a feeling you probably will. All right, Terrence, I didn't see anything worth talking about this week. How about you?
I did see something worth seeing.
Great. We should talk about it first to lead off the show.
I think that's a great idea. I think we're going to try that this week and see how it goes.
All right, then do it. Talk about it.
Okay, so both you and I are people who, if something sort of gains critical mass in the pop culture, then we like to check it out, whether or not we have a personal interest in it or not.
Sure.
Especially in the case of movies. So over the last couple of weeks, as any listeners out there who are a part of social media in any way, which I'm sure is all of them, have probably noticed, the popular thing right now is the documentaries about the Fyre Festival. For those of you who might not remember what that is, a few years ago, there was an attempt by one investor and his company to start a big competing music festival, one that would compete with something like Coachella. And their big twist on it was that they were going to have it all take place on this private tropical island. And, all these beautiful celebrities would be flown in, and then regular people would be able to book their rooms on this island and interact with them, and it was all going to be magical and amazing, and it all just went terribly, terribly wrong. And now, here we are a few years later, and there are not one, but two competing documentaries about the Fyre Festival. One of them is on Netflix, one of them is on Hulu. I could not bring myself to watch both of them, but I did watch one of them. I watched the one that's on Netflix, and that one is called Fyre, The Greatest Party That Never Was. And it's exactly what you would expect. It's a documentary that starts at the very beginning and walks you through how the concept for this festival came up, how it went through the process of being put together, and then the disaster of what played out. And I mean, it's an utter disaster. I mean, everything went bad. And at the end of it all, there are people in jail. There are multiple lawsuits. It just pandemonium reigned. The documentary that I watched, the Netflix one, is, super entertaining. Like, I totally get why it was so popular on social media and why everyone is kind of talking about it.
I saw a lot of celebrities tweeting about this specifically. Like, a lot of these popular movies like Bird Box and some of these others we were talking about, it's more just like people are getting real excited about it. But I saw like a lot of just, sports stars and music stars, and, a lot of folks constantly talking about this in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. And, if you have an interest in documentaries, definitely check it out. But even if you're not a documentary fan and you just, enjoy watching something go terribly, terribly wrong.
Right.
I mean, it's highly entertaining.
Schadenfreude or whatever it's called.
And, because this was all put together by a social media company, there's footage of literally everything. Like, there are very few cases where somebody is telling you a story about something that happened that they don't have footage that they can cut in to show you it happening.
Right.
It's super entertaining. It's definitely worth checking out. Even if you don't think it sounds entertaining, just pour yourself a drink, kick back for an hour and a half, and just laugh at the stupidity of rich people.
Yeah, that one's definitely one I'm very interested to see. So I'll have to check that out soon. So I mean, was there any sort of, without giving away anything since it's so fairly new, was there any sort of a resolution to some of these issues? Were people made whole for money they had taken from them, or is this one of those things where I just need to watch the documentary?
Yeah, the short answer is it's all too new. So
Okay.
all the litigation is still pending. There was the guy who brainstormed the entire thing was convicted to 6 years in a federal prison.
Wow, good Lord, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal.
Yeah, the movie leaves kind of vague whether or not he's actually serving that sentence or if it's all wrapped up in appeals. I would assume that it is. He's an intriguing character because he's a bit like Zuckerberg in that he's a super nerd. He's just a nerdy guy who concocted this entire startup around the idea that he wanted to hang out with cool people in cool places and be part of the cool scene, and that he's built businesses off of that concept. And he was fairly successful, but by the end of it, you realize that in reality, he's just he's a brilliant salesman with zero business sense. So nothing can ever work out that he's involved with because he just, there's no foundation for him to actually pull off the real hard business job of making anything happen.
Sounds like a hard lesson in a good idea poorly executed.
Yeah, sort of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a fun ride to watch it all come together, to watch the way this guy talks people with years and years of experience doing these sorts of things into coming on board this sinking ship. And they're talking the entire time like none of this is working. We can tell this is all a disaster, but none of them walk away from this guy. There's just something about him that attracts people, and they just stick around all the way to the end.
Man, sometimes rich folks and their money, they just have to gamble it, instead of going to Vegas,
right?
They do it with stuff like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they just feel like the guy has a vision and they just want to hang on to the end until it's just beyond gone to hell.
Yes.
And who knows what's left standing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Definitely want to check that one out. All right, can we talk about Batman now?
Dude, the whole reason I'm here is to talk about Batman.
Okay.
I can't wait.
It's the Batman show. Okay, so Ben Affleck, officially or unofficially, but seems like he's pretty much out as Batman.
Yeah.
So, and I want to say he even maybe released a statement himself. So never mind all that stuff about it not being official.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. I believe he has said that he will not be playing Batman anymore.
Right. So just before we jump into a little bit of the details here, I think I just want to reiterate one more time. Ben Affleck was a good Batman in terrible Batman related movies. So
I would agree with that.
It's sad, I think, that he's not going to get to. I kind of feel like Affleck is obviously such a big super fan, and at some point he was going to write and direct this movie as well as star in it before Matt Reeves took it over and before Affleck decided he wanted to step away. So I do have, I guess, a little bit of sympathy for Ben Affleck for the fact that he was hoping to see his vision of this fully realized, and it went from his singular vision to him just being in the movie to nothing.
Yeah.
So we'll. I guess if you can feel bad for a big-time rich movie celebrity, there you go. So he's out, and they have not yet named a new Batman. Matt Reeves is said to have this one come out. He's writing and directing. I believe it's in summer of 2021 is the projected release date. That's meaningless at this point. But from what I understand and from what I read, they are sort of officially saying that this is going to focus more on a younger Batman. And it's also apparently going to focus more on his sort of detective skills and less on the, vengeful vigilante justice that Batman deals out.
Okay.
I assume he's not going to murder anyone anymore.
Well, we can only hope.
We'll have to see about that. So I guess my initial thought is, how young are we talking? Because if you're talking teen Batman, that's a pass for me, and you can make an animated series about it.
Yeah, and I mean, they're kind of already plundering that territory on television with the Gotham series and whatever assorted other DC series.
And for what it's worth, from what I understand, the animated Batman stuff is really good. From everything that I'm told from folks who are really into a lot of the different choices for consuming Batman, the animated series are actually pretty good from what I understand. So. This will be something different, and I'm sure no matter how bad it looks, we'll see it fairly soon when it comes out.
You've already decided it's going to look bad?
Well, I just would like to know how young we're talking about. Are we talking about a 20-something? Are we talking about a 30-something?
Well, I mean, considering how old Ben Affleck is, I mean, just saying younger than Ben Affleck gives you a lot of room to play with.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm curious how young we're talking.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. So I thought it might be fun to throw out a couple of names. And when I'd first seen this story, I hadn't seen a whole lot of names thrown out. Since then, a lot of these names have been thrown out.
Okay.
So not as excited as I was when I first saw the story. But I'm going to throw out a couple. Probably not very controversial. Then I'm going to throw one at you that I think you're going to hate, but I'm going to try to explain it. So Batman, I think, is best when he's has that calm anger to him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a guy that I have in mind who now I've seen since mentioned who I think does that really well, even though I don't really know if he's a good actor or not, and that is Michael B. Jordan.
Okay. Well, okay.
Okay.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, it would be a black Batman.
It would be a black Batman. I actually have another black Batman to throw at you.
Okay.
Just for and you don't have to comment on all of these, but before I knew that they were going to go to the younger side, I think you're going to laugh. This is actually not the one that I thought you were going to think is horrible, but I think you're still going to think it's horrible. I think Idris Elba would be an awesome black Batman. He's so intense. He's definitely got the looks to play Bruce Wayne. I think he's a pretty good actor, even though he's been in a lot of terrible movies.
Well, let me just also, the other thing that springs to mind in the case of both these guys is that they already portray Marvel characters. Okay. I think that's a non-starter.
You think that's a non-starter, really?
I do.
I mean, this is just wild speculation. It's not like I think any of these guys are actually going to get it, especially the one that I'm about to throw out at you.
Okay. Well, just for the record, I don't think either of those are even remotely wild considerations for Batman.
Do you have anything to add to the conversation? Or are you just going to react to mine, which is fine?
I have nothing to add.
That's what I thought. Okay, so here's my other one I'm going to throw at you. So this is an actor, and he's got quiet intensity. He's a huge star. He's a little bit older also. He is currently in a very successful franchise. And I'm talking about Keanu Reeves. Now, I see the look you're giving me right now, but just think about it. I'm not a huge fan of Keanu Reeves, the actor.
Right.
But like we've talked about with The Matrix and to a certain extent with John Wick, he's a guy who, when you know how to write for him and you know how to shoot him and you know not to give him long monologuing speeches, I think he can work in that sort of quiet under the surface anger. And he's certainly good looking enough to pull off Bruce Wayne. He would probably need I will call it a physique tweak to his physique for this role. But I feel like that's not as crazy as a suggestion as the look you're giving me.
Well,
but I didn't want to just fall into for me, for every male role, I'm like, oh, Tom Hardy would be great for that. So that's always my default answer to everything. Right. Leo could certainly, if you wanted to go after a megastar, really, I think who this Batman needs to be is someone we don't know. That would be my big preference if it's an unknown.
Okay. Well, so just to back up, Keanu, isn't he substantially older than even Ben Affleck is?
I don't know. But I
feel like
he looks young. To me, he looks younger than Ben Affleck.
I mean, he looks great for his age, for sure, but he's
you have 28-year-olds playing 16-year-olds in Hollywood all the time. So I don't, whatever.
Okay. I mean, I'm just reacting to the director specifically saying he wants someone younger than Ben Affleck.
Okay. So. Well, I'm waiting for some names.
Okay. Well, the only name that I've heard thrown around that I think holds any water is I've seen suggestions of Armie Hammer as a possible Batman, and I could totally see that. Like, he's a chiseled jaw, real good looking guy. He's English, playing an American, and that is super popular right now.
Yeah, I mean Christian Bale.
Yeah, exactly. And he's worked with Henry Cavill in the past, so
and see, I
compare them up again.
I can't immediately criticize that choice for him not being a great actor because of the choices that I gave you. But I think we also have to keep in mind when they named Michael Keaton as Batman, this was pre-social media, but people freaked out. They thought it was a horrible decision.
Oh yeah,
and he was
hated
fine.
that. Yeah,
he was fine as it. He was one of the better ones. I mean, when you look at the history of the folks who've been cast in that role, he's definitely one of the better ones.
Yeah. Let us never forget that at one point George Clooney played Batman.
Yes, he did. Yes, and pre Marlon Brando phase Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
All right, so I feel like I just threw myself against the rocks there for 5 minutes while you scowled at me, but that's fine. That's kind of how we do it in real life too. All right. So
It's not my fault that your suggestions were terrible.
And it's not mine that you had none. Okay. So James Gunn.
I gave you a great one at the end.
You just copied that from Twitter, I'm sure.
All right.
All right. So James Gunn is also back in the news, and there's been talk about him coming on board to direct and certainly write and possibly direct the next Suicide Squad movie for DC. And news this week has us reading that he may actually relaunch the entire movie and the movie entirely. So I guess different versions of the characters, different actors playing the characters.
Well, so what I read is that, he's turned in the first draft of the script and it just doesn't contain any of the characters from the previous movie.
Okay.
So it's basically a reboot of the franchise, if you want to use that term for it, in that he's not bringing back the previous characters. Okay. I mean, the first one wasn't great, but that seems like a really odd decision. Like if you've greenlit a sequel to a successful movie and you're not going to keep anybody from the original one, what's the point of even continuing it?
Yeah, I can see that. But at the same time, I think that it's such a coup for DC to get James Gunn that, and also because the first movie wasn't exactly beloved, that I feel like it's not a bad move. It's sort of a refresh. It's a property they feel like could be a big deal. And if the first one wasn't a big, huge hit, then no matter who they slap on the second one, if they have the same characters and the same actors, I feel like it has a ceiling.
The thing is, though, the first one was kind of a big hit.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was kind of a moderate hit, wasn't it? I guess we'd have to look it up. But I mean, if they're shooting for the stars and they're trying to compete with Marvel, maybe they feel like it's one of those properties that if they got a good refresh, it could compete. Because I mean, obviously James Gunn has proven his worth not only with his Marvel movies, but with the fact that it was sort of an ensemble deal with a bunch of different characters who have snappy dialogue going back together. It's a bit of a gamble, but if they're basically saying we're gonna put the short-term future of DC in your hands with this, it's a good guy to do that with, I guess.
Sure. I mean, again, it's baffling why Suicide Squad was the slot that he ended up in. Like, why not let him take a crack at Superman,
So I did actually read another article and man, doing research for the show, it's so frustrating sometimes because there's maybe it's like with any industry, but there's such a line between what's rumor and what's actually reported. I mean, just like what we talked about, I've seen reports this week that James Gunn is definitely going to direct Suicide Squad 2. And I've seen ones that, he's just in talks and it's not finalized yet.
Right.
I mean, it's all over the place. Even if you go to, sources that are generally trusted in entertainment, you see that stuff.
Yeah.
So another article I had seen is that when James Gunn came on with DC, they actually gave him his choice of what he wanted to direct, including Superman, and he decided on Suicide Squad, which seems insane to me.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if maybe there were some caveats to him taking over Superman. Like, you wouldn't have carte blanche to do whatever you want.
Right.
Maybe they, this is pure speculation, nothing I read, but just from my head, maybe they insisted that he, that he recast Superman, or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe they insisted that he keeps Henry Cavill on, and he didn't want to do whichever, he wanted to do the opposite of whatever that was. It's the only thing I can think of why he wouldn't take Superman, but that was kind of a surprise to read that.
Yeah, there's a lot of surprises when it comes to the DC movies. Like, who would have ever guessed that Joss Whedon would have gone from making the Avengers to, trying to salvage the train wreck that was Justice League? I mean, he did himself no favors, and it was an utter failure. And here it is again, where you've got the successful director from the Marvel side who's coming over to DC, and already you're just like, oh man, this guy's just sinking in the quicksand that is the DC movie scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. So similar to that, Zazie Beetz, who is one of the actors on Joker, the new Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, she sent out a tweet saying, this is a very strange quote, and it raised my eyebrows. She says, we rewrote the entire thing while we're shooting it. Literally, we would go into Todd Phillips' trailer and write the scene that night and then do it. This is her commenting on the process for shooting Joker. And we've talked about this movie several times, and pretty much every time we talk about this movie, the thing we're talking about is, man, that doesn't sound like a good thing at all.
Right.
And this is the worst thing I've read so far related to this movie. Man, that just sounds like a recipe for total disaster.
Yeah, everything that's come out about this movie is just one red flag after another.
Yeah, I don't like this. The initial set photos of Joaquin's costume, whatever little details we've had of the storyline, they're just nothing about it is getting me excited, other than the fact that I like the Joker character. Mm-hmm. But man, with all the things when that movie was announced that sort of excited me, Scorsese's involvement, the fact that it took place kind of in the 80s, a little bit different, the fact that it was sort of like supposed to be more of a gritty origin story. I was like, okay, I'm on board for that because it's the Joker. And then everything since that has just been bad.
Right. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have literally another year plus to wait for that one to come out.
Oh, joy.
Okay, so speaking of DC, how about a little bit more DC, I guess, related news? Zack Snyder's back.
What, with DC?
No.
Oh, okay.
So Zack Snyder famously directed several movies for DC that were bad, and then produced several movies for DC that were bad. His involvement with DC now has been minimized, almost completely gone. But he finally has a new project. His new project is going to be with Netflix, and little details are out about it so far. But apparently, the loose synopsis of it is it's a heist movie that takes place in Las Vegas with zombies. That's
perfect for Zack Snyder.
I mean, I'll be honest, like you guys know, everyone knows I'm not a fan, but probably I'm trying to think. I think my favorite Zack Snyder movie was his Dawn of the Dead remake.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really great.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun. Yeah. It was he directed it well. I thought it was very clever.
In the modern era of zombie stuff, it's probably maybe the best.
It was
top two for sure.
It was one of those movies that came out right when the sort of new zombie craze started to explode, and it remains one of the better ones. So for what he does as a director and what he likes to do story-wise, it actually does sound like a pretty good match.
Yeah, and it's also good to hear that it sort of sounds like he's figured out that he needs to go back to something safe and knock out another hit to kind of make up for the way things played out with his DC movies, and that's for the best.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see sort of where his career goes from here, because I know for a while his next rumored project was supposed to be a film adaptation of Atlas Shrugged, which
wow, okay.
Yeah, that doesn't. No,
this is a much better choice for him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So be curious to see sort of how this one comes together. I don't think there's any casting news or anything like that yet, but really, I mean, it sounds like Zack Snyder, if anyone, is going to be the star of that, the director.
Sure. Yeah.
And him jumping back to a genre that he's had success with before. A couple more movie news bits here. So, in all the fallout of what's happened with Bohemian Rhapsody and Bryan Singer, the news came out this past week that Bryan Singer is set to earn about $40 million for his role as director on Bohemian Rhapsody. And man, that has rankled a lot of people.
Yeah, it has. And just to give a little bit of a breakdown to anyone who doesn't quite maybe know the inner workings, if you're like a top tier director or actor, you can earn something called points on the back end. And what that breaks down to is points are a percentage and the back end is the total gross of a film. So if you're a big name star, let's say you might get paid, here's $5 million to star in this movie. But then you also, in your contract, negotiate points on the back end. And that means that once the movie has recouped the cost of making it and reached a certain threshold, you start receiving a tiny percentage of the total gross of that film. So in the case of Bohemian Rhapsody, it had a budget of about $50 million. It's now made coming up on $900 million. So the portion of his contract that allowed him to earn points kicked in, and those points, in addition to his base salary, is adding up to what's reported to be about $40 million. Mm-hmm. And normally, when a director is fired from a film, they would lose the points that's built into the contract. in the case of Bryan Singer, there's a little gray area because the DGA awarded him the sole director credit on the film. And as a result of that, he is supposed to be able to get his points. Now, I'm sure all of this is going to lead to lawsuits because the studio is not going to want to give him that money. And of course, Bryan Singer's not going to want to give up that money. So at the end of the day, who really knows how much he's going to walk away with? But right now, on paper, he's going to be $40 million richer because of this.
So how do you feel about this?
Well, I mean, again, if all the allegations about him are true, then it's horrible that a bad guy is going to make $40 million. But at the same time, you know, he earned $40 million.
He is responsible for the quality and success of the movie.
He didn't cheat anyone. Yeah. I mean, he has the sole director's credit because he shot all but now they're saying about 2 weeks worth of work on the film. So
it's a sticky situation, but I mean, and I have conflicting emotion or conflicting feelings about it, but I really don't have any conflicts about this part of it. I mean, unless there's more gray area to it than we know. I mean, you know, he's a horrible guy. He's a bit of a monster, it sounds like, but you know, he shot the movie, and he's, you know, you blame the director when it's bad and it's unsuccessful and it's a disaster. You also have to give the director credit when it's good and or very successful. So it really is kind of that simple to me.
I mean, you know, obviously he's denying the allegations and he's fighting against them, but if ultimately he knows in his heart that they're true, then, I mean, it would be amazing if he would take $30 million and donate it to charities for sexual assault survivors or whatever. You know, just start the contrition and try to recover something from this.
And I think also legally, you know, not being a lawyer, another issue they might run into is if he didn't do any of this stuff on Bohemian Rhapsody, I think that's another area that it's just like, you know, this is stuff that happened in the past and it's horrible. And hell, if criminally, if he can be charged with stuff, great, go after him.
Right.
But as far as him earning his check for this, I don't really see how they can take that away. Like you said, it would have to be something that either he or his people talked him into where he donated a significant portion. Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, he's staring down the barrel of never working in Hollywood again. He's probably going to want to hold on to as much cash as he can.
All that speculation about him doing his next project, that's going to fall apart.
Yeah. But, well, you know, since you bring that up, let's go ahead and touch on that. It turns out that the guarantee he has for that Red Sonja film, which is the film he's supposed to be working on next, which the production company behind it has said they're keeping him. He's still going to be the director for it. He's in line to make $10 million as his base pay for directing that film. That will be the most money he's ever made as base salary on anything he's ever directed.
Wow.
So if he does make this movie, he's going to do really well off of it.
Good luck getting a popular cast for that. I mean,
what
big name actor is gonna
the thing
or
is
actress
though
is gonna be in that?
You look at Bryan Singer's career as a director, and he never cast big name stars. Never. They all started off as unknowns. That's kind of his trademark.
Okay, so sort of related. We talked about previously on the show that, of course, this is not Nostradamus here, but of course, the success of a rock and roll biopic like Bohemian Rhapsody is going to lead to others. But I believe it was Terrence who specifically had noted that the next logical one would be David Bowie.
I did say that.
Yeah. And so as Terrence sort of predicted there is going to be apparently a David Bowie biopic. It's going to star Johnny Flynn. And this one, I mean, it's obviously a ways away. I don't believe, I'm not sure if they've actually named a director yet on that.
They have.
Oh, okay.
It's the guy who is most famous for directing Moon.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
He also directed Source Code, which was pretty good.
Okay, I remember that one.
Then he directed that Warcraft movie.
Never saw that one.
Yeah, I didn't either, but it looked so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one hang up about this movie that is the whole thing. And that's that, number one, it has not been authorized by David Bowie's estate or family, which, okay, fine, fair enough. But much more importantly, they don't have rights to his music.
Dude, the moment you said there was a hang up, I knew what you were going to say next.
Yeah.
And that game over. Don't
Yes.
even bother making this movie if you can't use his music.
Please don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no way.
No, that's a non-starter.
I don't
even touch it.
Oh, it seems like they have two choices. They either are going to cut around the music somehow,
No.
or they're going to make similar legal David Bowie sounding music, which would be a crime that should be fully prosecutable.
Yeah, that's...
So either they need to not make that movie, or they need to come to the table with Bowie and his estate and pay them enough money to let them use the music, because total non-starter. And I can't imagine anyone would have any interest in making that.
Except there's already a director attached, and he's already cast a star.
Right? And Bohemian Rhapsody's made almost $1 billion.
But yeah, I agree. That should have been step one. Like, lock that up first. If you can't get it, don't even move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a very strange thing that is. I just can't imagine.
I mean, maybe they were hoping that getting a big name director attached would give them, that little extra push to land the rights. I don't know.
All right. So last thing before we just touch on a trailer real quick. So I would follow up on this. Of course, the Big Lebowski thing that we saw as a teaser before the Super Bowl turned out to be a Super Bowl ad. It's a Super Bowl ad for Stella Artois, the beer, and it also stars Sarah Jessica Parker. I have not seen this commercial. I will not watch this commercial. I will never let the sound and the visuals enter my body in any way. Whoa.
Yeah, that was a curious choice of words.
It's just not going to happen. And
I can only hope that all of our listeners tweet this commercial to the Tech Blood Pod Twitter account.
He doesn't even drink Stella Artois. He drinks White Russians. For the love of God. Oh my God. So Jeff Bridges, I'm sure he'll be sad to hear this, as I have no doubt he's heard the show. He's dead to me. He's dead to me now.
Wow, that's harsh.
And I'm also very curious to know, like, how just from a legal perspective, I'm just really curious how this works with, like, the Coen brothers, and they must have had to sign off on this because they wrote the script and they created the character.
Sure, I would assume.
So do they have to be dead to me too? Because I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't know. You should research it. Get back to us on it.
All right, let's talk about some trailers. We allowed a trailer to enter our bodies before we watched this.
Well, I didn't.
This show.
I did not allow that.
Yeah, I don't know where that phrase came from. All right, Hobbs and Shaw. Hobbs and Shaw. So Hobbs and Shaw is the spinoff from the Fast and the Furious. It's The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Jason Statham. And here's another. They might as well just throw it in as another Fast and the Furious movie. And this didn't really get me going.
So it's clearly designed to be a buddy comedy.
Yeah.
They're like two opposite guys who are forced to work together, and there's a whole bunch of passive aggressive male
sexual tension
going on between the two of them. It's just it's clearly modeled after like 80s buddy cop movies.
Right.
But the problem is it feels like an 80s buddy cop movie. We're so past that.
Yeah.
And it does not look good. Nothing about the trailer looks good. And I'm sorry. I know tons of people are going to watch it and they're going to just laugh their ass off about this movie. But you're wrong. You shouldn't be laughing at it. It's not funny. It's just bad.
Yeah, this doesn't look good to me. It's going to make $1 billion.
See, I don't know, man.
People love The Rock, man.
Watching this movie, I get the same kind of vibe that I got watching the trailer for Solo. I'm like, ooh, this is not going to do well.
Okay.
I think this is going to be the Fast and the Furious franchise's version of Solo. One step too far away from what the audiences care about, a whole new take on it that they're not going to appreciate, And also, I just got to bring this up as well. Jason Statham, right? Like, here's a guy who wasn't even an actor, right? He got plucked, given a role by Guy Ritchie. He nailed it. He had a good look. He suddenly became an action star. He showed up in a lot of kind of mid-level action movies.
The Transporter franchise.
Yeah, exactly. Movies like The Transporter. And did fairly well with it. Had a real good long run. And then sunk back down under the waves, right? Kept making movies, but they were all like straight to streaming services. So if you were a Jason Statham fan, you might watch The Transporter 8 or whatever. But the rest of us moved on from that.
Right.
And then this guy, out of the blue, got a phone call from the producers of Fast and the Furious and said, hey, do you want to come join the most successful franchise in Hollywood right now? And no one was more shocked by that phone call than Jason Statham. And he rode that horse. He did a great job. People loved the movie. They were like, Jason's back, right? And the very next movie that he makes is this one. And I kind of feel bad for the guy because, like I said, I think he's going to be soloed.
All because he crossed Vin Diesel by liking The Rock.
Yeah. The one mortal sin, according to Vin Diesel, is to side with The Rock.
Yeah. So this one, the other thing you mentioned, 80s buddy action comedies and really even really action movies from the 80s. They like the good action movies always had those, cheesy one-liners. That was a staple of 80s action movies.
Sure.
And now this one and a lot of others of its ilk, it seems like that's the focus, are just getting to the cheesy trailer one-liner moments. And I just hate that. Make a good movie.
Yeah.
Like, don't make a 2.5 hour. That's another thing. I'm sure it'll be 2 hours and 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
Don't make a 2.5 hour trailer full of one-liners. Make a good movie.
Yeah.
That just drives me nuts.
And I mean, listen, obviously it's his own spin-off from Fast and the Furious. So there was no way The Rock wasn't going to make this movie. But that guy is so unreliable in terms of how good the movies he's going to make is going to be. It's sometimes you look at it and you're like, yes, this is the kind of movie you should be making. And then he immediately follows it up with a movie where you're like, dude, say no to some of this.
Yeah. And Idris Elba is in this, who Terrence does not want to play whoa, that was almost a bad Freudian slip. Who Terrence does not want to play Batman.
Oh, guess what? I don't want Idris Elba to be in this movie either.
Yeah, he's in this, and it looks like they've like inserted some sci-fi element to it now.
Yeah, like he gets injected with a super serum that makes him basically a superhero who can beat up everybody.
Right.
Listen, Idris Elba is an amazing actor, right? That is undisputable. And obviously, according to all the ladies, he's a gorgeous man to look at.
Yeah.
But it's like Hollywood wants to punish him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he keeps getting cast in terrible movies.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He was in Star Trek Beyond, which is terrible. He was in that Dark Tower movie, which was terrible. He's now going to be in this, which is terrible. Also, he's constantly playing villains. Like the man is a great actor. Why can't he be the hero? Not Batman.
Like Batman?
He's just too old to be Batman.
You talk like you think he deserves better, but when I want to give him Batman, you're like, no, why is that, Terrence? Is there any reason in particular?
Just saying he's too old to be Batman.
Okay, he's too old. Gotcha.
However, listen, I will be the first one in line if the rumors come to fruition and he's ever cast as James Bond. I think that would be perfect.
He would be an amazing James Bond.
I think without question, he is the most obvious choice in the entire world to take over the James Bond franchise.
Sure. All right, yeah, so Hobbs and Shaw doesn't look good, but I will say this. I mean, I haven't ever really thought any of the Fast and the Furious movies look good either, but I've enjoyed a couple of them. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm prepared to come on the show and tell you that I was wrong if this movie is good. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
Don't hold your breath,
but I'm prepared for it.
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you listening as always. We will do it again soon. Keep checking back for new episodes. You can hit us up on Twitter at TechBloodPod. You could also leave us a review on iTunes or really a review on any service that you use to listen to the show. We'd really appreciate that, and we'll see you on the next one.
And if you're lucky, next week, even more bickering.
More bickering, and I'll have some more crazy Batman theories to throw out maybe.
Great. Looking forward to it.
So Batman, he's a billionaire, right? Batman now in 2019 would be a villain because everybody hates billionaires. They should take Idris Elba or, whoever, and cast Batman. He would be a villain now because now everyone hates these guys. They feel like they're entitled, that they didn't work for their money. And Bruce Wayne did not earn his money. Like everyone hates Howard Schultz from Starbucks. He built that company. He didn't inherit that. He built the company from the ground up and everyone loathes him. Batman was handed a bunch of money because his parents got killed in an alley. I mean, whatever. And he grew that a little bit further, I guess, into, Wayne Industries or whatever the hell it's called in the comic books. And he used this inheritance to build what he became. People hate that now. So Batman, I submit to you, would be a villain in 2019. Would you watch that?
How much coffee have you had?